You've likely felt it. Your grocery bill climbs. Yet every month brings another headline across small towns you've probably never heard of about a farmer going broke. How can both be true at once? How can the people who grow your food go under while the price of that food shatters records? Something in this math is off, and the closer you look, the weirder it gets. Buried in the quiet fields that feed us is a crisis most people never notice. One poised to reshape what lands on your plate in the years ahead. And by the end of this video, you'll see why that crisis could hit your life harder than almost anyone is ready to admit. At first glance, it sounds impossible. If food is expensive, shouldn't farmers be making more money? Shouldn't rising prices mean rising profits? But that assumption breaks the moment you learn how the modern food system actually works. The price you pay at the store has almost nothing to do with what farmers receive. And as the cost of fuel, fertilizer, land, machinery, and debt skyrockets, the people who grow your food are being squeezed from all sides. This isn't an accident. It's the result of a decades-long shift toward consolidation, dependency, and risk that leaves farmers exposed while corporations rake in record earnings. What this means for you is simple. Higher prices now, and potentially empty shelves later. Stay to the end, because what's coming next might be the real breaking point. But let's slow down for a moment and understand the problem from the ground level. Literally. Imagine a family farmer waking up at 4 a.m. to tend crops or livestock, working 12-hour days in all weather, only to discover at the end of the season that their hard labor barely covers their debt payments. This has become the norm, not the exception. For many farmers, each harvest feels like gambling with their future. They take loans to buy seeds, fertilizer, machinery repairs, fuel for tractors and trucks, and insurance. But the prices they receive when they finally sell their products are often determined months earlier by global markets they have zero control over. This isn't a simple business. It's a trap built on uncertainty, volatility, and shrinking margins. And here's what nobody tells you. While prices at the store have jumped dramatically over the past few years, farmers' income has barely budged. In some cases, it has even fallen. When you buy a loaf of bread, only a tiny fraction of the price goes to the wheat farmer. When you buy a gallon of milk, the dairy farmer receives pennies compared to what you pay. The rest goes to processors, distributors, retailers, and middlemen who control everything between the field and the shelf. Farmers are caught between soaring costs and stagnant pay, and the math simply doesn't work. But this is where the story gets even stranger. Because as farmers struggle, giant corporations involved in processing, shipping, and retail are posting record profits. How is that possible in a crisis? The answer reveals a hidden power imbalance. Over the past few decades, a small handful of companies have consolidated control over everything from seeds to storage to supermarkets. When a few companies dominate the market, they can dictate terms, set prices, and absorb the profit from every step of the food chain. Farmers become price takers, not price makers. Consumers get higher bills. The corporations in the middle get richer. And the system becomes more fragile with every passing year. This fragility became visible during global disruptions, when supply chains snapped like brittle twigs. For farmers, the crisis wasn't just about shipping delays. It was about inputs becoming painfully expensive. Fertilizer prices tripled in some regions. Diesel costs soared. Replacement parts for machinery became scarce. Even animal feed spiked in price. Imagine running a business where every cost suddenly doubles, but the price you receive for your product barely shifts. That's the reality farmers face, and for many, it's unsustainable. But here's the dangerous part. When small farmers go broke, they don't just disappear. Their land is usually bought by larger operations or investment groups. Farming becomes concentrated in fewer hands, often those with less connection to the land and more connection to maximizing output at any cost. The community that once depended on those farms begins to erode. Local food networks weaken. And when extreme weather, market shocks, or geopolitical disruptions hit, a centralized food system becomes incredibly vulnerable. What does this mean for you? It means that even if food is available today, future shortages are no longer far-fetched. They're a logical outcome of a system stretched to its breaking point. But let's go deeper. Consider the story of a dairy farmer who once milked a few dozen cows on land passed down through generations. For decades, the business supported a family and a community. But in the last 10 years, dairy prices stagnated while feed and energy costs exploded. Meanwhile, megadairies with thousands of cows, backed by investors, subsidies, and industrial-scale operations, could sell milk at prices small farmers couldn't match. The result? Thousands of small dairies shut down. Some families walked away from land their great-grandparents had worked. And the price of milk at the store? It didn't go down. In fact, it often went up. But here's what nobody tells you. When small farms die, you lose far more than a local business. You lose resilience. You lose biodiversity. You lose the knowledge of how to grow in a specific climate, soil type, and ecosystem. It's like removing bricks from the foundation of a house one by one. Still stands, for now. But pressure builds, cracks spread, and eventually the structure gives way. This hidden food crisis isn't happening overnight. It's happening slowly, gradually, like erosion. And erosion is dangerous because you barely notice it until the ground collapses beneath you. The signs are everywhere. Farmland is being bought by investment funds as inflation hedges. Farmers are dying by suicide at alarming rates under crushing financial stress. Rural towns are hollowing out. The average age of farmers keeps rising because younger generations don't see a future in agriculture. What happens when the people who grow your food disappear? Who replaces them? Now imagine a future where food production is dominated by a few giant entities. Your food choices shrink. Prices become even more volatile. Supply disruptions hit harder. The global nature of modern food supply means that a drought in one region, a conflict in another, or an economic crisis elsewhere can ripple across continents. You might feel safe now, but this system is far more interconnected and vulnerable than most realize. But here's where the story gets even more alarming. Because farmers aren't just fighting market forces, they're fighting nature itself. Extreme weather is becoming more unpredictable. Floods, droughts, fires, and storms destroy crops, wipe out livestock, and devastate soil. Every disaster pushes more farmers toward insolvency. And when insurance payouts don't come fast enough or at all, families lose everything. Meanwhile, food prices spike again for consumers. Think about this. If a tech company crashes, you lose an app. If a bank fails, you lose money. But if farmers fail, you lose food. The stakes are incomparable. Food isn't optional. It's survival. But what happens next may determine the future of global food security. Some countries are already facing shortages of staples. Others are restricting exports. Nations are scrambling to secure food supplies as if preparing for a long storm. And if the hidden crisis continues, the ripple effects will shape economies, politics, migration, and daily life. This is the turning point, because if farmers continue to go broke, the entire food system sits on a knife edge. Your grocery bill will rise even faster. Product variety will shrink. Quality may decline as cost-cutting becomes the norm. And in extreme scenarios, certain foods may become luxuries rather than staples. Think of eggs suddenly costing triple, beef becoming rare, fresh vegetables becoming seasonal again because storage and shipping become too expensive. It sounds dramatic, but it's already happening in pockets around the world. So what does this mean for you? It means you're living through a moment that will shape the next decade of global food security. It means the crisis isn't just on farms. It's already in your home, disguised as higher prices and shrinking packages. And it means the choices made now by governments, corporations, and consumers will determine whether food remains abundant or becomes a pressure point in society. This is where the threads of the story come together. Corporate consolidation, rising input costs, climate instability, worker shortages, land speculation, generational exit, all converging into the same bottleneck. This is the perfect storm forming quietly behind the scenes. And while you may not feel its full force yet, the warning signs are everywhere. But there is a path forward. Regenerative farming, local food networks, cooperative models, and decentralization can rebuild resilience. Supporting independent farmers can slow the erosion. Diversifying crops reduces risk. Protecting farmland from speculation maintains independence. None of these solutions are quick, but they are necessary. So here's the core truth. The hidden food crisis isn't just about farmers going broke. It's about what happens to a society when the foundation of its food supply becomes unstable. It's about whether future generations inherit a working food system or one pushed to collapse. And it's about your power, your awareness, to recognize that cheap food was always an illusion, and the real cost has been accumulating unseen. If this opened your eyes, remember that the story doesn't end here. There's more to uncover, more to question, more to prepare for. Stay curious, stay aware, and if you want to support work that exposes stories like this, consider subscribing and engaging with this channel. Your voice matters more than you think.